Welcome back to the AGP slot. In this video we're going to take a look at all the AGP cards that I have in my collection. This is not going to be like a review video of each card, but just my experience with them and my personal thoughts on them as well. So let's get started. First off, we got the GeForce 2 MX400, which I've used in a bunch of videos with Mandrake so far. This card has 64 megs of RAM and is one of the low-end cards of the time. It came out around 2002 and we ended up buying it in 2003, 2004. It came with our custom built computers that we had from back in the day. This card can easily handle Counter-Strike 1.6, but any Quake 3 engine games you're going to struggle a little bit once you bump those resolutions up past 1024 by 768. It's a little bit of a struggle. So back then I had two of these cards. One was in my machine and the other was in my dad's. We both had custom built PCs by the same person. So I had this card in my machine for about a week or two, and it just wasn't capable of playing the games that I wanted to play, like Soldier of Fortune 2, at high enough frame rates. So I swapped it out about a week or two later for the GeForce 4. We took it back to the same builder and he upgraded it to that, along with a CPU upgrade and RAM upgrade. This card that you're seeing right here in front of you is my dad's original GeForce 2 and still works perfectly, as you've probably seen from the other videos with Mandrake. Somehow it just will not die, and I assume it'll just work forever since it's a low spec card with no fan or anything. Still works great to this day. Alright, this is the GeForce 4 4200 Ti, 128 meg. This is the card that I upgraded to from the MX400 GeForce 2 card. It was significantly faster and could hit way higher frame rates in Quake 3 engine games, which is mostly what I was playing back then when I had it. Now this is not the original, but it is brand new. I managed to find this on eBay after searching around for a bit. I ended up buying a 4600, which didn't work, so I decided to put in a watch list for 4200, and literally the next day this card showed up brand new, so I just had to get it. I really didn't want to spend as much as I did on it, but I figured this is basically the exact card that I had back in the day, so I max bidded that thing. I was definitely getting it. I'm not gonna let someone else take it. Yeah, so I spent about 200 bucks on this thing brand new. Definitely not worth it, but for the nostalgia, just had to get it, I guess. So this card is DirectX 8 compatible, so you can definitely run more games like Soldier of Fortune 2 at higher FPS. Now I believe this card is a little rare simply because it has 128 megs of RAM. Most of the ones that I've been able to find are only 64, and I'm not sure if their performance would be that different. Obviously if you crank the resolution, then yeah, you're going to get more FPS with more RAM, but for lower resolution stuff, I'm not sure it really mattered. I used this card for about a year, and eventually the fan started to go bad. Like the bearings wore out and started getting really noisy, so I ended up RMAing it to BFG, and they sent me back a 5700, which was just crazy. I got a free card upgrade, but the problem is with the 5700 then, is the performance was just not as good as the 4200, which is kind of pathetic. Now it did have more VRAM, and it could do DirectX 9, but on DirectX 8 stuff, the performance just was not as good, so I was a little disappointed. I mean, it was probably a little bit better, but I don't know, it didn't seem like it was a worthy upgrade. Unless, of course, you wanted that DirectX 9 support, which I actually ended up needing for Battlefield 2. But yeah, 4200, great card. Definitely the low end. I don't know if I got screwed on that. Like the guy just gave me like whatever low end thing he had, or maybe it was just like price wise, like the cost wasn't worth it to go higher. But yeah, I was pretty happy with this card. Ran all my games, no problems back in the day. And one interesting thing about this is I believe the fan heatsink is just cemented on or something. So yeah, I wanted to replace the thermal compound on this, but definitely can't do that. And since it's brand new, it's probably fine anyway. There's no like paste under there, it's just like cement or something. Yeah, that's about it for this 4200. This is my first somewhat high-end GPU of the time. Definitely one of my favorites and should work really well with Mandrake once the drivers are in there. So now we're going to move on to the 4600, which unfortunately doesn't work, but we're gonna check it out anyway. Alright, this is the 4600. It also has 128 megs of RAM, and it would be pretty awesome to see the difference between the 4200 and this card, so I could see if I actually was getting screwed on that upgrade. But unfortunately, something's wrong with the memory, or maybe the core itself. I managed to get into XP, and there's just so much like display corruption. Tried to get the drivers installed anyway, and yeah, it just kept blue screening over and over. So this card's basically junk. I didn't pay too much for it, but still, maybe one day I can figure out how to swap the RAM chips or pay someone to do it for me. That's a bit above my pay grade. This card is a lot longer than the 4200, which makes me think it's way higher end. I would love to be able to check this thing out, but you know, bad memory, so can't do much with it just besides look at it. The seller did say it worked, but yeah, clearly not. Possible shipping damage, but the box looked fine to me. Okay, now you're looking at the FX 5700. The 5000 series line was just horrible back then. ATI was just stomping them with their cards. So this one does have 256 megs of RAM and DirectX 9 compatible. So it ran way more games like Battlefield 2, which was what I played back in the day. I was a huge Battlefield 2 player. The performance though was just not very good though, and even the 4200 was kind of killing it in DirectX 8 games, which was a bit of a bummer. Now this card is the Ultra edition of it. I got into Windows with it, and it said it was the Ultra, which is awesome because it wasn't in the description of the eBay listing, and everything works with it. Only issue is the fan bearings. Now this also happened to me back then too. So I had the 4200 that had fan issues. Then I got the 5700 for free as an upgrade that also had fan issues, and I ended up RMAing it like 3 times or something. It was insane. So yeah, this is a pretty good card. Performance is, it's alright. I mean, it's a 5000 series, so not the best thing ever. Still though, good piece of history here. I think eventually in a video we're going to take a look at Battlefield 2 on this thing. Maybe I can try and get it to work with Mandrake as well, just so I can see like how bad it really was when I was playing with it back then. So yeah, this is basically what I had as well. Now mine didn't have the heat sinks on it, so I think that's an Ultra feature, because it does have those. Performance was a little bit better as well, just because the memory clocks were higher. And during this time period, the 9800 Pro was also a thing. That card was absolutely insane. I would have loved to have that thing. I remember being in game and talking to one of my friends saying how he was getting like maxed out 120 FPS and I was only getting like 70 on this thing. I was like really jealous. Wanted to have one of those so badly. But I was stuck with this thing. Couldn't really afford to upgrade. Not for a few years anyway. So that leads me into the next card. I have two 9800 Pros. This card I wanted so badly back then. It was just amazing. The performance on it was just crazy. Unfortunately, I never got this card back then, and I was stuck on Nvidia for a while. Nvidia cards were always really good, but they just blew it out of the park with the 9800 Pro. They're both 128 meg cards, and unfortunately, this one right here has a bit of an issue. So I was trying to plug in the Molex, and this kind of just bent back. Killed the card, and no longer functions, unfortunately. But do have this one. I believe this works perfectly. I bought these like probably over 10 years ago on eBay. Yeah, really great cards. I used them for a little bit when I first got them. Didn't really have any issues. Quake 3 ran super well. Maxed out the frame rate on whatever monitor I was using at the time. So yeah, these are really great cards. This one here might be fixable. Probably just needs to add like a little bit of solder and like reconnect it or something. I haven't looked too closely at it, but probably like the solder joints like snapped off whenever they're pushed out. So yeah, I'm not gonna really like mess with it. Since I have two of them, you know, might as well just use this one if it's working perfectly fine. Alright, next we're going to move on to the 6000 series from Nvidia. Alright, now what you're looking at is the GeForce 6800 GT 256 meg. This card is an absolute beast and is probably the highest you can really go on this Athlon XP system that I have. So this is right when PCI Express was starting to become a thing and they were not making as many AGP cards. I mean, why would you want to anyway, right? Because the performance was just outpacing the AGP slot with like memory bandwidth and stuff, so not much of a point to make AGP cards except for like people with older systems and backwards compatibility, whatever. So I have used this card, works perfectly. Tried it out with like Far Cry, but I think we're CPU limited, unfortunately. Maybe that Enforce 2 chip will help a little bit with dual channel memory, I don't know. Might have to find out in another video. Okay, this is the 6800 XT 256 meg. It's PCI Express instead of AGP. Like I said, this is the beginning of PCI Express taking over completely. I managed to grab this on eBay for only like 20 bucks, so I figured it'd be worth adding to the collection just to have. I did have it back in the day. I only used it for like, I don't know, a couple weeks, and then I ended up upgrading my whole system to AM2. And with that I got a 7900 GS, which I don't have. So yeah, not a lot of experience with this card, but I had something very similar. I know it was XFX and it probably had that same logo on it too, so it might be the exact one that I had back then. Not entirely sure what games I was playing on it, since it was the AGP version. Probably something like Far Cry or still, you know, Battlefield 2. Usually when I would find a game that I really liked, I would just play it for like years and then eventually move on to something else whenever I got like a graphics upgrade. So maybe like Counter-Strike Source is what I was playing as well. Eventually, if I ever get an upgraded system like a Socket 754 or maybe 939 from AMD, pop this card in, try it out. But until then, it's just gonna sit in my collection here. Can't really use it in anything. I do have an LGA 775 based system, but that's a little bit too new for this type of card. The 775 chip would probably be better for the 8800 GTX, which is what I currently have in it. It's a little more period correct. This is a bit too old for that. And lastly, we have the X1950 Pro AGP. This is one of the last cards that you could get for AGP, and it is way overkill for the Athlon XP. I had it in there and I was just bottlenecked like crazy on the CPU side. So like this thing should be able to handle Oblivion no problem, but because of the CPU limitation, only getting like 10 or 15 FPS even on low. So this card's not exactly useful for my purposes. I saw it on eBay one day and I figured I would just get it because it is AGP and it's one of the last ones that you could possibly get. Eventually I want to get the 7950 GT AGP. I think that'd be about on par with this one. They're both 512 meg cards, but I don't know if there would be much point because of the Athlon XP. Have to get a newer system with AGP. Not a whole lot to say about this one, because at that time I had the 7900 GS card, PCI Express, in my system. At some point my parents upgraded their system to something that had PCI Express, and I guess their graphics card died, and my friend had the 1950 XT, I think, PCI Express, so he let me borrow that, and I ended up using it in their system for a while, probably over 5 years. It worked pretty well, but you know, they didn't play any games, so this is just for like web browsing and email and stuff. Worked okay, no issues. I'm sure I tested it in my system at some point too. Yeah, not a whole lot else to say about it. It's just way overkill for anything I have. Well, that's all the cards in my collection. I do have that 8800 GTX, but that's a bit newer than what I'm trying to do for this channel. At the moment anyway. I think my goal is to just get 1 to 2 cards from every generation just to have. It's not like I really need these for anything, but I think I'm starting to become like a retro collector, so probably end up getting a few more cards here and there as they pop up, if there's a good deal, you know. And of course show them all off on this channel. Anyway, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.